yesterday was terrific. And here, the second day, like weekday, you guys want to really be here. And it is fantastic. I want to tell you a story. It's not the Baal Shem Tov or anything like that. But during senior year in high school, I had an experience that really shaped my life's direction. I participated in a program called the March of the Living. And it is a powerful experience of visiting concentration camps with hundreds of other teenagers. The trip culminates with thousands of teenagers from around the world gathering and marching into Auschwitz and then marching out. I remember people were waving flags from their home countries and waving other flags from our homeland's country, Israel. It was a pivotal moment for me. Throughout it, I kept an extensive journal about the visits that we made, my emotions, my thoughts. I poured myself into these pages. The march takes place each spring, corresponding with Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, Holocaust Memorial Day, Israel's Memorial Day for fallen soldiers, and Israeli Independence Day. And from Poland, we flew to Israel, and the connection was obvious. From Jewish destruction emerged Jewish strength and security. From cultural devastation came Jewish vibrancy. The message was that there was a clear bridge between the Shoah and the creation of Israel. It was a simple narrative that we all shared. In reality, the story of Israel is much more complicated. Hitler to Israel is inadequate. It is not the story of Zionism. Reality quickly becomes more layered. Zionism did not start in 1948, but was a political movement from the mid-1800s, well before Hitler. Zionism's dream is far older, thousands of years older, as the Jewish people dreamed of returning to Zion for over 2,500 years. As the psalmist wrote, "For God will save Zion and build the cities of Judah, and they shall dwell there, and that shall be an inheritance." We were not strangers to the land, and importantly, we have always had neighbors as well. The promised land was never empty. I recall journaling on the airplane home from March of the Living, putting the journal into the back seat pocket of the seat in front of me and falling asleep. A few days later, as I was resettling at home, I wanted to read some of the journal entries, and I realized that I had left it on the airplane. It was gone. And I think about that journal from time to time, but I've come to believe that its loss was for the best. The emotions on those pages were so intense and raw, I decided that maybe it was a tashlich moment for me. I wrote down all those feelings of pride and horror and vulnerability and human cruelty and resilience and so many questions, and then I released them. But rather than to a flowing stream, it was to an unexpected airline maintenance person who was cleaning up newspapers and water bottles on a plane in SFO. Included in those pages was an active dialogue of a teenage version of myself thinking about the intersection of the dreams of Zionism and the narrative of Israel as the phoenix rising from the ashes of the Shoah. All these decades later, I continue to think about these various narratives. There are many frames that we put around our relationship with Israel: the dream of Zionism, the protector of the Jewish people, startup nation, and others use the frame of occupation or colonization. My goal today is not to debate which frames are more historically accurate or compelling. I speak about Israel often enough that you know that I believe the colonization narrative is inaccurate to the Jewish experience. and unhelpful to the Palestinian cause, and how I believe occupation is detrimental to Israel's security and national morale and sense of Jewish peoplehood. If upon hearing any of these statements you think that you know what that means to me, I invite you to a cup of coffee. Let's talk about this more, unpack complexities and nuances and narratives and security issues. My goal today is to reclaim the act of dreaming as a Zionist. Being lovers of Israel, Ahavat Yisrael, means struggling and bringing the dream of Zionism into the reality of the world, and it's a dangerous world. This summer, as part of my sabbatical, I attended virtually a conference at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. The Hartman Institute is an important think tank and place of study. Our Washington, D.C. Jewish community, led by the Federation, has a special relationship with the Hartman Institute, in which scholars come to our area for public discourse, raising issues of import. So look for what our Federation is doing with the Hartman Institute throughout the community over the year. This lecture was by Yehuda Kurtzer, and he is one of these people that I know whatever his topic is, I'm going to be challenged to think differently in a good way. Kurtzer titled his talk, Aspirational Zionism, Revitalizing a Moral Conversation about Israel. He began by stating there are blessings and curses in a dream fulfilled. When a dream is fulfilled, it is an amazing, majestic experience. That is certainly the case with the fulfillment of the dream of Zionism, a historic and spiritual dream fulfilled on May 14th, 1948, as David Ben-Gurion declared in Israel's Declaration of Independence. Israel will be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisioned by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all of its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions, the Declaration of Independence says, and it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. That is a central part of the dream, even if parts are still aspirational. But in what Kurtzer calls the tragedy of institutions, as soon as the dream is fulfilled, the work changes. The primacy of the dream is subsumed due to the immediacy of the needs of survival. For Israel, the dream of statehood was realized, but within hours, it was defending itself from enemy armies. The amorphous dream, which had fueled the hearts and spirits of the Jewish people, now had actual boundaries to defend and governmental ministries to deliver services to citizens and the flood of refugees from across the Middle East and the West. The work shifted from dreaming to something else, defending. In so many spaces today, we continue to be defenders. Defenders against the latest headlines or NGO reports. We feel backed into a corner. We're defenders rather than cultivators of Zionist's central dream. Kurtzer explains, as defenders, we are forced into a position of trying to justify, contextualize, explain away uncomfortable moments. We become invested in justifying the institution rather than inspiring the dream. Let me insert here that if dreaming is an expansive spiritual experience, it broadens us, then defending is a narrowing one. Kurtzer continues, the Zionist idea is the notion of dreaming. It's not about statehood alone, it's not about culture alone, but it's about the audacious act of the Jewish people dreaming about its future, to dream about an ideal version of its political, spiritual, moral future, and then to commit itself to getting closer to that reality. You can claim Zionism was about statehood until Yom HaAtzmaut 1948. And now Zionism is going to have to mean something else, with an equal amount of galvanizing power and moral imagination to become a dream that people spend their lives pursuing, he says. He concludes, the biggest dilemma is we have stopped dreaming, or our dreams have become too small. Dreaming is the place of Jewish exploration and insight and vision. The word is used over 50 times in the Tanakh, 23 times alone in the book of Genesis. The author of Psalm 126 wrote, Shir Hamalot B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion Hayinu Kelchomim, a song of ascent. When the Lord restores the fortunes of Zion, we were like dreamers. And Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, the hope says that it is not lost if we maintain our aspirations of memory and of dreaming. Too many Jews sense that Zionism has stagnated, or worse yet, become tainted. For me, Zionism is a badge of dreaming, not a system of oppression. Theodor Herzl meshed the visions of Zionistic dreams with political reality well before 1948. Earlier than the Holocaust, Herzl, alongside Pinsker and Hess and so many others, combined the dream of Zion with a new political will. Last month, there was a conference in Basel, Switzerland. It was to mark the 125th anniversary of Herzl's first Zionist Congress. Over 1,000 people attended, which is almost 5 times the number who attended Herzl's Congress in 1897. Dr. Shuli Rubin Schwartz, the chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, attended, and she reflected on the challenges American Jews face and the changed assumptions of different generations. You might relate to some of her observations. Chancellor Schwartz said, she wrote, in thinking about Zionism for the 21st century, we must recognize that the Zionism many of us grew up with was forged in a very different era from today. Yet my vision of Zionism has also evolved, she said, in large measure because I've been privileged to work for over 30 years with smart, talented, Jewishly curious students at JTS. The intellectual, communal, and political context through which they connect with Israel, especially in the last 20 years, differs dramatically from my own, Chancellor Schwartz said. Their love of Israel is impacted by concerns about equity, racism, and what they perceive as tribalism. And they worry that the state of Israel is falling short of its ideals of being a Jewish democratic state. Some dismiss these young American Jews as uninformed or naive or misguided, but if we are committed to the Jewish future and a Jewish state that lives up to our highest ideals as a people, we must engage with those whose love and support impels them to critique. I agree with Chancellor Schwartz. We cannot rush to dismiss those who critique Israel. We cannot be blind to rightful criticism of Israel. It is the nature of a vibrant democracy, after all. But we must also not coddle those who use critique as a tool to delegitimize Israel's right to exist. Conflict around Israel is pervasive on college campuses. Our college committee is increasing its work with our college students, but we have also become more pensive, even in what I call polite company as well. We have grown cautious about discussing Israel. We are worried about being cornered to defend or contextualize ourselves or Israel. There are not enough spaces encouraging us to dream, to build, to update Zionism for the 21st century. One of the many things I pride myself about Bethel is our broad conversations surrounding Israel. Within the congregation, we have national board members of AIPAC and J Street and many other organizations deeply engaged in Israel. Our conversations and programs surrounding Israel are diverse and substantive. From Benny Morris to Danny Gordis, many perspectives are shared on this bima. Recently, I found myself at a table with a group of wonderful Bethel regulars, the topic of Israel came up. One person is active in J Street, a left-leaning organization, and the other person is involved in ZOA, a right-leaning organization. The conversation got intense, remained polite, but their differences were very clear. Later, reflecting on the conversation, what I was most proud of was that nobody left the table. Literally, everyone knew that they had a legitimate place at the table at Bethel, whether on the political left or on the right. What joins us together in our community is our sense of Ahavat Yisrael, a love of Israel. Our common grounding is a sense of dreaming for what Israel can become. Even in our differences, our commonality keeps us engaged with each other. From the ambulance we dedicated to Magen David Adom just before the summer, to our next congregational trip to Israel in December with our religious school students, our commonality is what keeps us at the table. It is Ahavat Yisrael, a love of Israel. We cannot let the posture of defending Israel diminish the essential experience of dreaming of what Israel can become. We cannot set aside our Zionist dreams because of the urgency of a moment. We must call upon both. Ahavat Yisrael means our critique of Israel is designed to nudge it closer to fulfilling the dream of Zionism. Critique cannot be a bludgeon in disguise. I believe the dreams of Zionism are still alive. Last week, Israel's Prime Minister Yair Lapid addressed the United Nations General Assembly. He said many things, including speaking of a dream of peace, and he identified a vision for the future. He said, "Peace is not a compromise. It is the most courageous decision we can make. Peace is not weakness. It embodies within it the entire might of human spirit. War is surrender," Lapid said. War is surrender to all that is bad within us. Peace is the victory of all that is good. And he continued, despite all the obstacle, still today a large majority of Israelis support the vision of this two-state solution, and I'm one of them, he said. He spoke of the vision of Israel's future, the dream of Zion. And when we speak of a two-state solution, though, and people say you are a leftist political extremist, that's a problem. In fact, I think it is reclaiming the act of dreaming. We must strive to build Israel on its highest social and moral ideals while also preparing against the real dangers of Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and so many other real dangers. Kurtzer challenges us. He says, if Zionism doesn't continue to dream and to make as its central aspiration the place where Jewish people dream about what we are capable of bringing about for ourselves, and that might be about justice or social transformation, about religious pluralism, about whatever it might be, he says, if Zionism does not continue to dream, then I guarantee you that the Jewish people will continue to dream. But they will increasingly use their dreams in the language of justice and hope and freedom against that Zionism that chooses to remain soberly awake. I know he's right. It is already the case that too many American Jews are turning away from Israel because they feel their personal dreams of justice and equality and pluralism and fairness are not reflected in the Israel that they see. We have become such strong defenders of Israel that we have muted our dreams of Zionism. Israel needs us to be dreamers once again. We need to help Israel become the best of itself, just as America needs us to be dreamers right here. The hope is alive as long as the Jewish soul sings, as long as our eyes face the east. Then our hope is not lost. But the words of the Hatikvah are conditional. If the Jewish soul no longer sings of Jerusalem, or our intentions no longer are towards Jerusalem, then the hope of the Jewish future is dimmed. Let us love Israel as dreamers. Let us express the dream of Israel, of what Israel can be, even as the immediate demands safety and critique. I don't know what was on the pages of the journal that I left on the airplane many years ago, but it led me to this. It led me to know in my heart that if we stop dreaming, we will lose sight of what we are defending. Hayinu kechomim. We will be dreamers. That is my hope for Bethel. Hayinu kechomim. We will be dreamers and lovers of Israel together. Let's not lose hope. Let's not lose our dream. The heart of the people, of our people, is to be dreamers. Hayinu kechomim. And that is why I'm a proud Zionist. Shana tova u'metuka. A year of health, vigor, peace, and dreaming here and in Israel. Amen.